Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary. And Blake, I've been suffering from FOMO the last 2 or 3, 4 days.
Why is
I
that?
almost had to disconnect LinkedIn and Twitter because everybody was at AICPA Engage, including you. I felt like I was the only person not there. I just really felt left out.
I was there. I didn't have a ticket, though. I was just in Las Vegas at the event, at the Shadow Conference, which seems to be a thing that started to happen now. I don't know if this happened before.
It's actually called Shadow Conference now?
No, that's just the name I've given to it. It's the
Okay.
Shadow Conference. Yes. I just can't do both the networking events after hours and wake up and go to a keynote at 8:30 or earlier in the morning. I can't do it. I don't know how people do it. You have to choose, right? So in the interest of my well-being and health, I decided I'm going to sleep in the mornings and I'm going to talk to people during the day. And that's why I go to these conferences. It's not for the sessions, not that they aren't great. They are great, and there's wonderful speakers, and I have friends who speak, and I wish I could go see them speak.
Well, sometimes you get to speak. Yes.
And sometimes I speak, not at this one, but at others. And so I feel bad about it because I just can't do both. I can't be in sessions all day and then talk to people the rest of the day. It's just like sensory overload for me. And so I chose, and I'm glad I did it. It was still nonstop for me, like 48 hours straight of just talking to people in real life, which I think is really important to do when you and I sit here talking to each other virtually all the time. We run a virtual company, so I get my in-person fix, and then I come back here to my office in my home in Scottsdale, and I'm alone. So I'm still coming off of the high of that.
So what was your impression? What was the vibe? Since you didn't go to the event, like what was the vibe in the hallways of the hotel, et cetera?
Well, I didn't even go into the expo hall. I didn't go to the lobby looked nice. The registration desk area looked nice, as it always does. But I also have sort of a political reason for not going to these AICPA events. Like I have a argument as to why perhaps we should boycott them. It's that they're so expensive. Okay, now I can get a free ticket because if I beg for a media pass, I can get one. But most people can't. And do you know what it costs to go to AICPA Engage, David?
It's enough where I chose not to go either. But it's prohibitively expensive. Maybe people in the comments are guessing. I don't know.
A ticket for a non-member for the main conference, which includes about 18.5 CPE credits, is $1,995. Almost $2,000 to go to this conference. Now, this is the premier conference for CPAs, for accountants. That's what it's billed as. And what does the average CPA make? David, you want to hazard a guess?
Well, I think starting salaries, we've talked about this in the show, are like it's 56, 70, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Like 25th percentile is $75,000. So that means that about a quarter of CPAs make that or less, right? Those are the newbies, most likely. Your typical CPA, your average CPA, is making around $90,000 to $120,000. Now, this is, of course, sourced from a variety of sites. Your experience may differ depending on your geography, but let's just say, for sake of argument right now, that in the United States, your average CPA is making like six figures, right? $100,000 a year. So a ticket to this event, which is for CPAs, is $2,000. You're asking people to spend
2% of their salary on the ticket.
Yeah.
A hotel is going to be $300 a night, $250, whatever.
$400 at the Aria.
Okay. So now you're at 4% of your, and then if you add in your food and flight and all that, you might be spending 5 or 6% of your salary to attend this one event.
Which is why, who shows up at this event? It's the directors, partners at public accounting firms, or C-suite executives in industry. That's who this conference is for. It's not, based on the pricing, you can't say that this is for your average CPA. And I like to consider myself a man of the people, David. And so not buying a ticket is my way of supporting your average CPA who also can't buy a ticket. or go to Las Vegas and stay at the Aria.
And they don't sell a ticket just for like the expo hall or any type of things like that where, hey, maybe I want to bring my team. They want to experience the event, almost in a way like, hey, pay a little bit to go to the expo hall. And then maybe next year we hope you register for the full event, right? To give somebody a taste.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of, yeah.
And I've said this on past episodes, past years, that I think actually one of the best things AICPA could do to encourage more young people to stay CPAs, to be accountants, is to come up with some sort of really affordable ticket for young people and even pay their way and say, if you pass the CPA exam, right, we're gonna enter you in a lottery to go to AICPA Engage and show you a good time, right? That could be a way to broaden the appeal. So that's my political reason for not perhaps getting a ticket. I also have a personal reason, David, which is that I really struggle to focus in sessions. In a traditional CPE seminar, even if it's somebody I love and I know personally and I care about, or it's somebody I really want to hear, I just have a really hard time focusing for an hour. And this is part of the reason why we created Earmark, so that people can earn CPE on demand, because for me, I can do like 20 minutes and then I'm done, right? And then another 20 minutes and then I'm done. Like, my attention span is very short.
And some of this is Vegas. You're in the casino, that's where the oxygen is. But then when you go to some breakout room in the conference center, you're already coming down. Like, the oxygen levels aren't the same.
It's really hard for me to switch from the hallway conversations to just sitting in silence listening to somebody and then having more hallway conversations. It feels almost, it's like two different things completely. But I actually have, like, I figured this out, David. I had a realization as to why I struggle with this so much. And
I'm all ears.
Okay, it's going to, just bear with me. It's going to take me a moment to explain it. So we started publishing on TikTok last year, the accounting podcast. So I don't know if any of our listeners listening to this on the podcast feed or on YouTube are on TikTok. If you watch YouTube, you've seen us on YouTube Shorts probably. We put 60-second clips of the show, one a day, onto TikTok and YouTube. And so I had a theory that this would help improve our numbers on the podcast. So I downloaded TikTok, at age 40, I downloaded TikTok and I started using it. I said, I got to know how this works if we're going to put stuff on it. And of course, like everybody else, I quickly became addicted to it, right? That's what it does.
Yes.
And some people are particularly addicted to it. So like I said, I can't focus long-term in a 1 hour session. Well, 30-second videos are great for me, right? That's perfect. And I started getting these videos about ADHD into my feed. Influencers who have it, talking about what it's like to have it and explaining this challenge. And I've always, sort of known about ADHD, sort of just in the zeitgeist, right? In the air. Yeah. You hear people talk about it. We joke about having it just the same way people joke about, oh, I'm OCD, which is almost like, you shouldn't really do that because there are real people with real OCD and there's real people with real HD or ADHD. And it's this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think that's what it stands for. Anyway, I start getting these videos. And last week, before I go to AICPA Engage, I'm sitting with my parents at dinner. I grilled for them. We're having this wonderful dinner. We're having a great time chatting. And I'm telling them about these TikTok videos and how I'm like thinking to myself, do I have ADHD? And my mom says, oh, you do. You do have ADHD.
I agree.
And I say, how do you know that? You say you'd agree, David?
Oh, 100%.
We both
have it.
I look at my dad and I'm like, is she losing her mind? Like, I don't remember this. And he's like, oh yeah, no. Remember when you were 10 and we had you go to a child psychologist because you were struggling in school? And I said, yeah, I remember that. Dr. Peshkis. And he said, yeah, she diagnosed you with ADHD.
Oh, so you have an official diagnosis.
Yeah. Like by a medical professional. And I said, well, how am I just learning about this? I'm not angry or anything. My mind is opening up here. I
told you, but because you have ADHD, you completely forgot and didn't pay attention when it told you.
That was one possibility. And I asked them that. And they said, no. We decided not to tell you because we didn't want to hold you back. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm processing this right after dinner. And, my parents are in their 70s. And also this was 30 years ago. And at the time, 30 years ago, I think people were a lot less accepting of anything mental illness related or
Agree.
Right. Like in they told me a little bit more at dinner about why they did this. And there were no accommodations the school was going to make. Right. I think at the time it was like Medicaid to make you normal.
Yeah.
And that has problems too. Maybe you over-medicate. Maybe somebody loses their creativity. And David, like I was a musician. I was very, like there are good things about this condition, right?
Yes.
And so they decided not to tell me. So I've gone for 30 years without knowing that I have this thing and just like brute forcing my way through life. But it's really funny to think about like how this all ties into what we talk about on our show and what we're doing with Earmark and this issue I have at conferences, right? I can't sit in an hour-long session because my brain won't focus for that long. I have to.
You need 12-second videos, and I'm guilty of this too. I listen to like all podcasts at 2x speed, right?
Because otherwise you go off on tangents in your mind.
Well, I don't know if it's because I go off on tangents. It's just I don't have the patience. Like it's like I want to consume more faster.
Right. And that's what I love about on-demand learning is that it works at my pace, so I can turn it on, turn it off. If I have an idea, I can press pause and I go make a voice memo because I don't want to forget the idea. That's always a problem I have when I'm sitting in sessions is I have great ideas and then I can't do anything about it. And then I lose them and I feel like this constant pressure. Yeah. But I think that's the background basically. The two reasons why I struggle at conferences is that. And I don't know, maybe I'll get some medication or maybe, just designing my life around it is the way to go, which is kind of what we've done, right? With our,
Well, I mean, coffee is definitely caffeine.
Well, and you know me, I
exercise bodes well.
I drink a lot of coffee.
Me too.
And since I've exercised since I started exercising like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, my mental state has been a lot better.
Yeah. Coffee, exercise, and protein. That's kind of the formula there.
But what is not compatible with this ADHD or any mental differences? What's the term people use now? It's there's a specific term that I keep hearing for people who have like neurodivergence. That's what it is.
Okay. Yes.
Right? Neurodivergence is this like it's now accepted that you think differently, that your brain operates differently than other people. And I'm thinking to myself, accounting firms are not very open to or set up for people who are neurodivergent like me. And maybe this is part of why I struggled in public accounting, because I cannot work for 8 hours a day, much less 10 or 12 hours a day filling out timesheets. It's simply incompatible with my brain. I cannot do it. I am deeply unhappy doing it. Now, I know there are people who can do it, right? Who can focus like that and grind, as we say. They grind through it. And maybe that has something to do with their brain chemistry.
Well, it's a different type of neurodivergence, right? Where they're a little bit more hyper-focused. They almost
it's the opposite.
The opposite, Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have that. So maybe that's part of it. And so, maybe one of the solutions to the accounting talent crisis is for firms to figure out how to work with people like me, where the timesheets don't work, where we can't grind, and we need to be working on more creative stuff. And accounting firms need that. They really needed my help. I actually felt really bad when I left because I could have done so much good if the system had been set up right.
To support, your thought process,
my happiness
and ideas, yeah.
We've got some comments in the live stream, and I want to make sure that we address these because we love when people join us live. If you are listening on the podcast and you have not joined us live, subscribe on YouTube. Search for the Accounting Podcast, hit subscribe and notify, and you'll get notified when we go live. And you can join us and tell us what you think. Heather Smith has joined us today. Great to have you, Heather, either up early or late in Brisbane. Hello from Brisbane, or Bris Arctica, is as it is freezing at the moment. That's so funny. It is it's going to be 108 degrees Fahrenheit here today. We are having heat advisories in Phoenix and in Las Vegas.
And power outages, so hopefully we don't have a power outage you had.
Heather says, my daughter just paid $4,000 and had to do 10 hours of assessment to get her ADHD assessment. If she wants the medication, she has to be monitored constantly, blood checks, weight checks, etc. Is that like an Australia thing? Because I feel like here, if you pay the $4,000, they'll just give you the drugs. But that might just be an
you could just get
American
an app these days and talk to somebody for 5 minutes and they'll sell you the drugs.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's the world we live in now, yes.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a virtual appointment for mine. David Bergstein, welcome.
Hey.
David says, I attended some excellent presentations. One, for instance, was John Higgins, practical examples of co-pilot, and there were a number of small firms that brought young staff. I also enjoy Earmark. Hey, that's great. It's great when firms bring their staff. In my experience, not enough staff get to go to places like Engage. It's like the high-level people get to go, and then they leave all their staff back at the firm to do the work. Because the problem is, if staff go, then they have to make up the hours. Right? They don't want to.
You still have
in
to
a
do
lot of
the work.
cases. Yeah. David says, play pickleball. That will settle you down. I don't know if you have seen the pickleball courts in my neighborhood. It is quite competitive, David. It might not.
I have no doubt that the typical Scottsdale, I'm sure, it's over-the-top Scottsdale. Oh,
Yeah,
I can just imagine.
they bring in like pickleball pros to the pickleball club in my neighborhood, and they have a bus and they go on the road and they compete against other clubs. So I'm not sure. The swimming helps a lot. Heather says it's 4 a.m. in Brisbane. Up bright and early. Jan, hey Blake and David, love seeing you here. Heather and David B. Hey Jan, welcome. Light 'em Up says, I made it to a live episode. Yes, welcome. You made it. We are all over the place with our recording schedule, so you never know when it's going to happen. It could be 4 a.m. your time. It could be at the
that's why you have to
perfect
hit
time.
that subscribe button. And then
That's
that way
right.
at least you'll get a notification on your phone, at least if you do that.
And you can always tune in midway and like catch up. So Out of Balance says, I find it crazy that ADHD is a common condition for accountants. Also, I just got my CPA looking to use Earmark for CPE. Awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to your thoughts. Let us know what you think. You can always email support@earmarkcpe.com or just email me, blake@earmarkcpe.com. Let me know what you think about the app. I'm always looking for suggestions. Oh, and by the way, we are launching a community this summer. It is happening. And so there will be a forum where you can join us and let us know, not just sending emails, right? You can actually let us know what you think about the app and how we can improve it.
And it just won't be about Earmark itself. It's a community of accountants, bookkeepers, tax professionals, auditors, and all kinds of stuff will be in there. It's not about Earmark specifically.
No,
it's
that'll be a space. That'll be one of the
yeah.
one of the spaces will be the Earmark app, and another space will be the accounting podcast. So if you're a listener, stay tuned. We will have an invite link for you eventually to join the Earmark community, and we'll probably do some like live streams in there, some members only kind of content.
We'll see organically where it heads.
Yeah. And we're debating whether or not this is something that's open to everybody or just Earmark subscribers. We haven't decided yet. I kind of like the idea of making it open to everyone because, one of our mottos is like CPE should be free, right? So
it's $2,000 to attend the Earmark community. It's going to be $2,000.
$2,000.
2% of your salary you have to commit to join our community.
No, we're the anti-expensive conference app. That's us.
I don't know if I have good news for you or bad news, but guess what? We're going back to Vegas.
Well, luckily it's only a 5-hour drive from me, and I drove. Okay. So that's okay.
So
what am I going back to Vegas for? And when?
QuickBooks Connect is back, but it's different. So QuickBooks Connect is going to be rebranded to Intuit Connect, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to take place, mark your calendar, Blake, October 28th through October 30th. It's in Las Vegas at the Aria Hotel, so you're going to have that deja vu feeling. You were just there. The ticket is about half the price, so one single all-access pass is $1,195. But if you bring your team, you get 30% off a team pass.
So you can basically bring your team for less than $1,000 a person.
Correct.
That's great. See, that to me seems a lot more accessible.
And based on the new website, it's pretty clear it's a QuickBooks and MailChimp conference, right? And they're going to be pushing really all of Intuit's connected services, which is interesting because before Intuit, the Connect part of QuickBooks Connect were the individuals and the collisions, right?
Right.
And now it feels like the Connect is our connected services. That's the vibe I'm getting from the website. The one good thing that's not changing is the focus is still going to be accountants and accounting firms, right? They're not opening this up to small businesses or anything like that. But the vibe I get from the announcement and the email announcement I got from it, it does feel a little like Intuit might be starting to push or position itself as an ERP play.
Right.
The sentence, one of the verbiage, the sentences said, accountants focused on mid-market companies. I just thought that was interesting. The announcement about this thing, you're talking about that specific segment of the accounting population.
I saw that multiple times. Mid-market, mid-market, mid-market. It shows up in the speaker submissions page. It shows up on the main page. They definitely want to be focusing on mid-market, which for Intuit is a slightly different definition than for other apps in the mid-market space. They mean, as I understand it, 10 employees or more. So businesses with 10 employees or more are considered mid-market by Intuit. And that's because so many of their customers are micro businesses, right? Less than 10.
Yeah.
What they call small businesses. So it's almost sort of like the sizing on, you know how sizing on like t-shirts can be very different depending on the brand.
Yes.
Right? Intuit skews small. So for them, mid-market is actually what many would say is just small business. But it indicates they want to move up market with the content of this show.
Yeah, because I think there's still this and it's been there a very long time, and Intuit's always tried to crack that nut. You know, you kind of outgrow QuickBooks maybe one day, but then maybe let's just say Intuit was selling you everything they could ever sell you. Maybe they were getting $6,000 a year from you as a small business, but to take the next jump to like a Sage Intacct, right? You might be spending 50, 60, 70 grand, another 50 grand to bring in an implementer, right? It's a big jump. So there's obviously revenue in there between $10,000 a year and $70,000 a year. And so if Intuit can move a percentage of customers into a 20 grand a year subscription,
right?
Like it's massive.
And that sort of, I guess that's the explanation for why this is now Intuit Connect instead of QuickBooks Connect. How do you feel about the name change, David? My initial reaction was, well, people don't know Intuit, the brand. I mean, we know it, right? But like the public, they know QuickBooks.
About every 4 or 5 years, the pendulum swings like, oh, we got to brand everything Intuit because nobody knows anything about Intuit. And then they do this, and then they discover it doesn't work. Remember they had those commercials a few years ago about the Intuit robot and all that type of stuff? They pulled way back on that Intuit branding, and now all the commercials are TurboTax and QuickBooks. TurboTax, QuickBooks, MailChimp, those brands are so strong that it's stupid to try to rebrand it other stuff. It's just really, really, really hard.
So you think your hot take is mistake?
Well, not so much as a mistake. It's just they're going to switch it back.
It'll go back.
I actually made a note in my notes. I said, I predict a year from now it'll be switched back. Yeah.
Regarding this mid-market label, Brian says small businesses don't really consider themselves small, especially at the 10-employee model. It's similar to how everyone thinks they are middle class regardless of their income level. That's right. That's true. So if you could say that Intuit is actually aligning better with how people think or how business owners think. Once you have 10 people, you don't think of yourself as small anymore. That's fair.
Yeah.
And to put this in perspective, like when I worked at Flowcast, we considered mid-market to be, it was more of a revenue thing, but like mid-market is like $10 million in revenue and up for a lot of like analysts like Gartner, I think, and even the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? Mid-market doesn't start until you're a much bigger company, which for many businesses might be like 50 employees. Anyway, I think I do like Intuit's definition, though. We got some more commentary here in the chat. It's a lively group today. We might have to consider Thursdays as our normal day, David. Luffy says, hey, I'm new to the podcast and I'm a huge fan. I just got my AS in accounting and I'm on my way to finish my BS by December of 2026. How different do you think the industry will look when I graduate? First, I want to say congratulations, Luffy, on getting the associates and good luck on the bachelor's. How will the industry look when you graduate in 2026? Well, that is a great question. On my way back from AICPA Engage, I was driving 5 hours. I listened to a Lex Friedman podcast. David, do you ever listen to Lex Friedman?
I know of it, but here and there I've listened, depending on the guest occasionally. I know of it, yeah.
So I don't listen to it a lot because it's these 2-3 hour interviews.
I know.
Right? And like I said,
you can't pay attention now.
I struggle to, and I lose, so I listen to 20 minutes and then I'm on to the next thing, right? But this time I just listened, and it was fascinating because Lex Friedman's an AI researcher. And at least that's how I think he describes himself. I don't know much about his background, but he was talking to another AI guy. And basically the entire episode was about when will AI destroy the human race? Because this guy who was the guest, Yampolsky is his last name. And I have to look up his first name. Yampolsky. Roman Yampolsky. He's a AI expert who believes he's one of the doomsdayers. He believes that we will end up destroying ourselves with super intelligent artificial intelligence. So it was a bit of a scary kind of thing to listen to. I don't think I'm on that end of the spectrum, but one thing that really stuck out to me from the episode was that the prediction markets, and both Roman Yampolsky and Lex Friedman agreed on this, that like the prediction markets, these markets where you can make bets on what's going to happen in the world, are saying that we will have general artificial intelligence within 2 years. So an artificial intelligence that is, for all intents and purposes, like effectively a human conversation you can have.
Assuming there's enough electricity.
And actually, David,
if Phoenix does not have air conditioning,
right.
Turns off all the air conditioners, maybe.
This is something they didn't address, but this is actually what I understand is the number one reason why we might not have a super intelligence anytime soon, is that it is so energy intensive that the cost of running a mind that works through these LLMs will be prohibitive.
It's like peak oil. They won't drill that last drip of oil. Like eventually, right? It's too much, costs too much to drill the last. You'll never run out of oil, right? It's kind of that same thing. It'll never reach because there's never going to be enough power, right? It'll never.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like maybe they'll figure it out, right? Or we'll all just have blackouts here in Phoenix, and it'll be powering the super intelligent AI in San Francisco or something.
To send you a notification on your phone telling you there's a blackout happening.
Yeah, exactly. So to answer your question, Luffy, how will the industry look when you graduate? Okay, so we probably won't have. I mean, my guess is like if I had to place a bet, I would not say we were going to have, AIs that are like humans doing our jobs in 2 years. But what we will have is we will have these very specific AI agents that can do a lot of the work that accountants and bookkeepers are doing in a specific domain. So accounts payable, for example, or reconciling a bank account, for example, a very specific task that is repeatable and trainable. And
you're going to have some extra tools, but the industry itself is not. Now that I'm getting older, Blake, and I'm having historical perspective of this industry the last 25, 30 years, it doesn't change very much. So from today in 2024 to 2026, the change is not going to be that much. But I do think, yes, we're going to start getting more useful tools that are your teammate or assistant.
Yes.
Like that.
So like at Earmark, instead of hiring people, and as I say this, I feel like this is not like a cool thing to say, but I'm going to say it, right? This is what we're doing. Instead of hiring people to do work, we are training AI agents to do the work. And that is what businesses will do because it's way more profitable to pay OpenAI to access their API to automate something than to hire a human to do it.
But the reality is the bodies don't exist. There's not enough labor force to hire.
And we can't afford to pay people to do it in the US anyway. It just doesn't make sense. If we were going to hire people, it would be people in the Philippines. And so that's basically what we have created at Earmark is we have an offshore workforce of really smart CPAs who we can afford, right, at their rates that are great for them in their country. And then they are leveraging AI agents that we are helping to train with them. And I think a lot of accounting firms who want to be profitable will end up following that kind of model. And it doesn't mean there won't be people here in the US. Those people will be client facing. And so Luffy's follow-up question is, I plan on getting my CPA after graduation, but are there any technologies that you think I should learn to prepare myself? Start playing around with these AI tools immediately. Regardless of what you do, you will be using them eventually. And if you don't know what to do, if you open up Claude and buy a subscription, or you open up ChatGPT and you buy a subscription and you don't know what to do with it, ask. That's the thing that's hard for people to get their mind around, is that you don't need somebody to teach you how to use these AI tools necessarily. The way I learned was by asking the AI itself, how can I use you? It becomes the teacher. The AI is your teacher. And then you learn what you can do with the AI. That's kind of a trippy thing.
And then I would suggest they're not going to teach you QuickBooks or Xero or accounting. They're not going to teach you accounting in college. So go get a job like Blake did, like being a bookkeeper for a small business. Right?
They teach you the theory. Okay. Oh, yeah. That's right. They teach you the theory, but they don't teach you the practical application of that theory, which is why accountants are paid so poorly after college, because they don't have any practical experience, and the firm basically has to train you how to do all that for 2 or 3 years, and they're not going to pay you. So if you want to make the good money, you need to get the practical experience. And then you can demonstrate, look, you're not going to have to teach me all this stuff. I already know how to use QuickBooks.
Because that's expensive when somebody senior at the firm has to go and help you do a bank reconciliation, because you can't do it.
So that's what I tell people. I tell accounting students is like, as much as everybody likes to rag on QuickBooks, go learn QuickBooks. Right? That's probably the most valuable skill you can have right out of school, is like knowing how to use a GL. And even if you end up working for a company where you're using like a NetSuite or an SAP or whatever, you will have the fundamentals down of how an app works.
I have a really good friend that met way back in tech support days in 1996. He was doing QuickBooks tech support as well. He got his accounting degree. He got his MIS degree, or it's like 2 degrees, double degrees, right? Every job he's ever gotten is because he knows QuickBooks in his whole career. That's how he's gotten
every
job. Yeah.
And there's so many people that just like don't know how to do it.
It's controller jobs, et cetera, because he knows QuickBooks.
And of all the apps that you can learn on your own without having to pay a lot of money, QuickBooks is the one, right? Like there's free certification, right? Or it's very cheap.
Intuit will train you now, right?
Yeah.
To do it.
Yeah, you could go sign up to be a QuickBooks Live bookkeeper, get all the training, and then quit. They don't care. More listener chat in the live stream. Heather Smith says, I hosted my first Earmark CPE this week, and the AI automation and platform was sensational. You are the gold standard. I feel very spoilt now. Wow. Thank you, Heather. We really appreciate that. We do our best to make it as easy as possible for our instructors. David says, do you allow old people in your community? Yes, the older, the better, David.
Yes, we created a room. We have a space called the Villages, and you can go in there.
What was the one I used to live near in Florida? It was called Kings Point. It was like a retirement community of like 50,000 people. Yeah. So we'll build that, David. Will you be our ambassador to the crowd, the older crowd? We would love to. We can create a pickleball space for you. I'm absolutely serious. I'm very open to it. We want your wisdom. David, we got some more listener comments, but I feel like we need to get to some news, and you have prepared.
I still have Intuit news I think we could talk about.
Let's talk about more Intuit news.
So to kill IRS Direct File, I'm wondering, will Intuit need to get in bed with the Republicans in the 2024 election? So this week, 2 articles came out. One is about, on Thursday, the IRS outlined plans to continue Direct File, the free tax program the IRS rolled out or tested this year with 12 states. Now they want to implement it full boat, permanent. They've invited all 50 states to join the program. And according to IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel, quote unquote, the IRS will make direct file a permanent option to file tax returns. But meanwhile, House Republicans have already proposed to eliminate the direct file program as part of their budget plan. House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith, Republican of Missouri, quote unquote, Congress did not authorize the IRS to create a direct file program because the American people neither want nor asked for it. So,
yeah, I can't believe that direct file is becoming a political election issue. Like, the next administration could determine whether or not we have this option available to Americans.
Yeah, because obviously if the Democrats win, they're going to keep IRS budgets the way they are.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to not attack direct file. And on top of that, they hate Intuit and big corporate tax.
Right.
They're going to double down on direct file probably.
Oh, and by the way,
win, they hate the IRS. They're going to kill direct file.
And by the way, for those who don't know what direct file is, it's basically the IRS created its own tax software. And if you are a very simple filer, W-2, that's all you got kind of thing, you can file with direct file for free. So it's what the free file used to be. They've just cut out the middleman. And now it's no longer Intuit doing it. It's IRS doing it itself.
But this creates a dilemma for Intuit because historically speaking, Intuit leans left and they're Democrat leaning. They socially, culturally, Intuit is more aligned with Democrats. But I think from the business shareholder Intuit, on this issue, they got to be aligned with Republicans. So what are they going to do this year in the election, right?
Well,
who are they going to support?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we've seen recent stories. There was one in the Wall Street Journal, one in the New York Times, about how there are more VCs now who are reconsidering, or at least before the Trump fraud conviction, were talking about supporting Trump in this election and going against the Bay Area, liberal-leaning bias. And I wonder what's going to happen, though, now, because that all was happening right before the fraud conviction, which I think a lot of people thought wasn't going to happen. So, it was very interesting driving up to Las Vegas, because on my drive, I listened to the latest All In podcast featuring 4 prominent venture capitalists. And David Sachs and Chamath Palihapitiya were talking in the episode about how they were hosting a Trump fundraiser. And then literally right as the episode was dropping, the fraud conviction happened, and they had to come back on for a segment that they recorded after the main episode talking about it. And, now and you could just hear it. You could hear the awkwardness in their voices of, oh, now we are hosting a fundraiser for a convicted felon, right? The calculus may have changed. So we'll see what happens if that turns off the venture capital folks and the Bay Area people.
And I still feel like maybe Intuit doesn't care because their live offerings are doing so well. It's fine, IRS. You take the free chum down here. We're making tons on the live offerings.
Right. But David, like you said, the street is punishing Intuit. I saw a headline, Intuit stock slumps after warning TurboTax could lose 1 million free users. Intuit stock price fell nearly...
Those were sexy headlines, but I every time in Intuit, and I've seen this for 20 years, every single time they announce earnings, the stock goes down the next day. It always does, because Intuit tends to conservatively
By 8%? By 8%?
Maybe even more. Yeah, because it's either that or I sell... When I had Intuit stock when I worked there, I would sell it and then it would go down. It's one of those two factors, usually.
Well, I really hope that... I know Intuit's a big company, and there's probably a lot of different opinions at the executive level in that company, but I really hope that they choose to take the higher path. They recognize that having a simple filing option for low-income Americans, for middle-class Americans, is the right thing to do. And people who are making 2 times the poverty level, which is $60,000 for a family of 4, should not be paying to file their taxes. And that's a lot of Americans, right? Most Americans do not make 6 figures. And so asking them to pay hundreds of dollars to file their taxes is just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
When it's not complicated.
I suspect it's going to stay. And my suggestion for firm owners, if you do tax services, you price against this. Here's what you get from the IRS for free. Here's what we do for you that's beyond. And you build your packages, and on your website you even include the IRS website. Look, 0 $0. Go here, right? And steer off people that are never going to pay you anyways, right?
Ichlas says TurboTax alone accounted for approximately 41 million tax returns. And apologies if I did not get your name correct. That's a really big number. And I think the software-assisted tax filing industry is over half of all returns these days.
Yeah.
Edgar says Intuit can just compete and do better. The IRS can have the free option, but private companies will most likely do it better. And I agree with that philosophy just in general. I feel like in so many areas, we would be better served by having a government-run free option and a private marketplace of options. And people can choose what they want based on their income. And that way you don't just have a government-run option that sucks for everybody, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like having a free option and private competition is what gets you the best results in the end.
Yeah, I think the big issue, if they said, well, everybody has to use our one system.
Oh, that would be a
I think
disaster.
as a citizen in the country, I'd not be okay with.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I would basically be like abolish the IRS if they made me use their software.
Only
But I think
this
there
system.
should be an option that they run, and you know what? If they do a great job, it'll force the private markets and those private companies to do better, which maybe they need a little competition from the government,
Yeah.
right? Edgar said we used to have a free option by getting the forms from the library. I actually have a friend who's an engineer who still fills out his tax return by hand on the forms because he can do it because he's like got that brain to read the instructions and stuff. I won't do that. I can't do that. Some more commentary from our listeners here. Brian, regarding QuickBooks, says, you're right about learning QuickBooks. My first job out of Big Four was a small firm where I had to learn QB, and I learned more about overall accounting than 5 years at B4. Yeah. There's something about actually making the entries in the system that solidifies the theory in your brain.
Well, you can't become a great painter just looking at paintings, right? You got to paint something.
You can't become a great musician by just listening to music. Yeah, fair enough. I like that. Luffy says, thank you so much for the advice. I do have an audit internship planned for January for a firm called Forvis Mazars. I'll definitely make sure to take those steps. Oh, great. Glad you have the internship. And
they just announced, I think they're like the 8th biggest firm now. They merged together and they rolled out a new affiliation. They're massive now.
We like to make fun of the new name, Forvis, but they are doing great stuff. Remember what I said about Forvis, David? It kind of sounds like Jarvis, the robot butler.
Oh, the robot
But where AI, with the way everything's going with AI, maybe a lot of the firms will be kind of like robot butlers, right? Yeah. Like I wouldn't mind having one if my accountant was like if I interacted with my robot accountant and there were like humans behind the scene making sure it all worked, I might be okay with that. Come at me. Sorry, go ahead, David.
You probably saw Google and a lot of the headlines. They have all these AI mishaps, like put glue on your pizza cheese so it doesn't slide off. Mm-hmm. But Google is still doing good stuff, believe it or not. So I saw this great announcement for all of us. So Google Sheets is basically going to kill email notifications by adding conditional notifications to Google Sheets.
Tell me what this would. Give me an example.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing I hate about Google Docs, we're a Google shop, is you correct a spelling on a word and I get an email. And then you put a comment on a doc, I get an email. Like, I don't want all those emails, right?
Right.
And, well, Google Sheets is going to solve this problem. So we've all done this. You've set up a conditional format in Excel. Hey, if this cell turns $100, change it green. Conditional formatting. And you can do that in Google Sheets as well. So basically, they took that conditional formatting and they've added a notification feature. So now you can create a conditional rule that sends an email to 10 people. So imagine setting up a spreadsheet for your client, where maybe they're doing data entry or they're manipulating who knows what. You don't want to know all the touching they're doing. You just have a checksum field, and once that changes to 1 or 0, whatever your notification is, you get the email. Then you know to go do something. It's one of those like super unsung features they're going to add, but I think it's mind-blowing. That
can be really powerful. I'm just thinking of all of the firms that we know that use a tool like LiveFlow, and they sync financials into a Google Sheet for their client. And then the client can go make comments on the Google Sheet. But now, with that new feature, if I'm the advisor to that client, I could set up like a conditional format on, say, a particular column. Let's say it's the variance column. And so if the variance blows out from one month to another and it's more than, say, 10%, send me an email as soon as that sheet gets updated.
Exactly.
So now I can be more proactive. That's really neat.
And apparently, I was reading the article, you can do this with Excel, but you got to do Visual Basic scripts and all this stuff. So I'm sure Excel will just knock off and copy this feature, but this is huge. Like, it's really because email kills all of us. So if you can only get an email when you need an email, I think that's monstrous.
I'm wondering if Excel might get dethroned someday by Google Sheets. I know saying that in the past just gets you attacked by all the Excel people who love Excel, but I've started to see threads on Twitter now where you have these finance bros who are saying, like, you know what? I actually like Google Sheets for the collaboration features. Yeah. And this is another one of them. So it's great to have all the power tools in Excel, but if you can't collaborate with people, it's really hard to be effective. It doesn't matter how good the tech is if you can't collaborate.
Yeah, collaboration's probably more important these days.
Yeah. Well, where do we go from here? I have listener mail. We haven't opened up
let's jump into that and we'll see if it triggers any of my stories.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go to the bottom of the mailbag because we got stuff back
Bottom
from...
as oldest?
Oldest, yeah. We're going to go LIFO today on our... Wait, is that right? Last in... No, FIFO. We're going to go FIFO today. First in, first out on the mailbag. I'm going to cut a hole in the bottom. And here is a message from Ken called Unique Path to CPA. Now, sometimes I get long emails from our listeners, and I like to summarize them just to make it a little more condensed. So, Ken, I hope you don't mind. I have condensed your email, but I've done it in a hopefully unbiased way by asking AI to trim the word count. So this is the 15-second version. Hey, Blake, Ken here. I discovered your podcast through your interview with Pete and Roger from UWorld, which I used during my CPA studies. I had a successful 10-year career in the mortgage business, but when the Fed raised rates, the industry took a hit, and I realized I needed a backup plan. The challenge? I never finished college. So I found WGU's competency-based education model and earned my bachelor's in 3 months while working full-time. WGU is Western Governors University. After a short break, I went back for my master's and completed it in just 36 days. So he did his bachelor's in 3 months, and he did his master's in 36 days. Now, how is this possible? Let's finish the email first. In November 2023, I landed an accounting job starting in June 2024. I quit my old career in January to study full-time for the CPA exams. As of April 22nd, I've taken all my exams, and I am cautiously optimistic about passing them all. Congratulations, Ken. That's an amazing story, and I'm sure many of our listeners will be interested to know what this whole WGU thing is and how you did it so quickly. So, David, do you know how this works?
Is it part of like that? Like, isn't there like something called like CPAcredits.com and it's using WGU? I know there's these alternative paths that are out there, but I don't have the details. You're catching me off guard here.
Yeah. So that site that you mentioned, CPA Credits, they have, I think, WGU as one of the options. The way you can get through a degree so quickly is because WGU, go to wgu.edu, it allows you to test out of courses. So you challenge a specific course and you take the final exam, and if you pass the exam, you don't have to sit through the lectures and you don't have to do the homework, right? Makes sense. Why should you have to take a class if you already have the knowledge?
This might be my way to get my bachelor's.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do this as an experiment.
You could do it. Do it in you could do it in
37 days is a little extreme, but maybe.
Yeah. So the way it works is that I think you pay per semester and it's unlimited. So it's like a subscription model for education, for college education. And this is by the way, it's not a for-profit organization. It's a nonprofit. And it was set up by, the reason it's called Western Governors University is because it was set up by the different states, I believe, originally. I don't know all the details, and I don't have it in front of me. So anyway, that's an option. Check it out if you are trying to get your credits and you don't want to take a long time to do it.
So what is the impact then to sit for the CPA exam? Are they going to be like, well, that's not like are you getting the credit hours on a transcript to sit for the exam if you do this?
Yes.
Or are they going to play some game with you?
No, I believe you're getting the credit hours on the transcript.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is sort of a hack, right? You challenge, you take the exam, you get the hours, even if you didn't have to sit in the classroom. So I like this a lot. Here's a message from Andy. Andy says, "Hi, Blake and David. Thanks so much for your content over the last few years. I've been a big fan. I am currently a controller at a private company, but for the last year or so, I've been mulling over potentially starting my own bookkeeping business on the side and growing it up. Although I have been a controller or assistant controller for the better part of the last decade and would feel confident booking entries and creating financials, I have been hesitant to go out on my own, mainly because of the processes of bookkeeping for a small business that I may be missing. I recently loved the podcast where you and your guest outlined fractional CFO and controller work. Would you have any advice for a place I could turn to find a full scope of work I'd be expected to perform for potential clients outside of just creating financial statements? That way I'd be able to outline, learn, and prepare before trying to find clients and be fully confident. Sorry for the long email, but thanks." So David, would you like to
we talked
give
about
some...
earlier in the show, go do the QuickBooks training, become a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor, right? That gives you that full end-to-end, how to type an invoice, how to pay a bill, like how to do payroll. You get the full-blown training of QuickBooks, and then focus. Don't try to serve a bunch of different kind of like a bike shop and a dental shop and a restaurant and this. Pick one thing. Maybe it's dog walkers, and just learn what they need to do. Because if you try to learn about 6 businesses at the same time, you're just going to struggle.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. It's just like, I mean, ideally, you're a controller at a company where you've developed some sort of industry expertise.
That's
and
true.
I would say, go try to find other companies like that. Maybe they're smaller than your current company and they can't afford a controller, and offer your services on a fractional basis. And you might even be able to get your current employer to let you do it, because the other option is that you leave.
Yeah. Or do the not volunteer, do books at the nonprofit. There's other ways to get that experience. But my guess is if you're a controller at a company, you get the exact same problems. It's just higher volume. It's the exact same workflow scenarios. It's just you have to wear more hats the smaller you get, and the volume's a lot less.
Yeah, and if you keep the services you offer like narrow, then you won't have to get all this expertise. I would, for instance, if you don't know how to do sales tax now, I would say getting into sales tax is not really where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, just outsource that to a firm that just does sales tax for your clients. So I guess the question is, like, without more information, we can't really advise you in this, but I would say try to do what you're already doing just for more clients. And this is what I did when I started my practice, is I actually was working part-time, but a lot of hours for one client in particular. And it was a nonprofit, and I asked the executive director if she'd be okay if I started my own firm becoming my first client. And that's how I seeded my firm, because I already had a big client, and she was open to me serving other nonprofits and other clients, and was happy to be a part of my success, as long as I continued to deliver the same quality.
Yeah.
I got the flexibility to do the work when I wanted, not to come into the office, right? So not every employer is open to that. But I think a lot of them are, because what's their other option these days? It's you quit, and then they're really in trouble.
Yeah.
So you might be able to work your way into a firm by bringing your current employer on as a client. Shall I keep going, David?
Keep going. Keep digging out that mail.
All right. What do we got? We got time for at least one more. This is from Gage. Listening to your episode about Google laying off accountants for AI development. I am about 13 minutes in, and you're talking about the college degree and the benefits of hiring someone without a degree. You failed to mention the concept of signaling. I am not an expert on it, but my understanding of why silly requirements are required to do certain things is due to signaling. Any thoughts? I would think firms would have a harder time to narrow down candidates if they drop the degree requirement. They would then have to do other things to see if someone is qualified, which I am all for. I feel like my degree was worthless and I learned 99.8% of my skills on the job. No need to respond. Thanks for reading. Well, we are going to respond to you on the show. We read, and I like to respond to every listener message. So do send us your mail, theaccountingpodcast@earmark.me. Engage. I am aware of the concept of signaling. It is basically a shortcut for weeding out candidates, right? The college degree indicates that you have achieved some place in society. So it's the perfect example. The bachelor's degree is probably the perfect example in our society of that. It's a way to.
It means you complied to a 4-year college and you did what you were told and you're a rule follower.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't mean you necessarily have the skills, but it means that culturally, right, you should be able to fit in. And so that's why it's required. My thoughts on how firms could narrow down candidates is use skill-based competency tests. An example would be our friends at Account Tests. They have developed skill-based competency tests that you can give to prospective bookkeepers and accountants in your firm, and you proctor the tests online, and they have to take it, and you get a score, and you can see if they know what they're doing or not. And I bet you if firms started giving those scores to people coming out of traditional accounting programs and to people who have been working for a long time that don't have a degree, they would actually find that the people who don't have the degree know what they're doing. Because like you said, most of what you learn is learned on the job in accounting. So,
and firms should look at other certifications, right? Like, they have their certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor, they're certified in Xero, they're certified in some payroll product from ADP or whatever it might be, right? Or OnPay.
Now, I think the hesitation, like the most legitimate concern is like, will these people without college degrees be able to talk on the level with my clients? This is a social thing. This is a cultural thing, right? That if somebody doesn't have a college degree, they're going to come across as not cultured. And maybe people don't say that, but that's definitely part of it. And firms might have to teach that, right? That is something that you learn in college. And you learn in classrooms, and you learn that kind of like socialization aspect. That's like what a lot of school is, right? It's just socializing you into a particular culture. But firms could provide that. They can teach that. Those are soft skills. There's lots of ways to learn that. There's probably online courses for people how to learn that. And it's a lot cheaper than going to 4 years of traditional education. So maybe that's an option for firms. It would certainly help, I think, to even out the inequity in our society if we stopped putting bachelor's degree as the minimum requirement for every job, every good job. It doesn't make any sense at all.
And we've seen that slowly start to dial back because I think we've talked about in the past episodes where there's jobs at municipalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
In like working for the treasury of a city or a county, and they've removed the CPA requirement, right? They've made it optional. And so maybe the next step is degree is optional, right? They're just going to look for experience.
And, I got to pull the 150-hour rule into this because that, to me, is the worst example of this kind of like inflation of educational requirements as a non-value adding social barrier. A barrier that has no value, that is really just designed to restrict supply, and it does it in the worst way by increasing cost and time, which affects the people with the least resources the most. Yeah. So the poorest people, who it excludes them from the opportunity of becoming accountants, which is such a great job for people who want to make that leap into the middle class, because accounting pays well in the broad spectrum of jobs you can have in America with just 4 years of education. And by excluding the CPA, by adding that 5th year, we are almost like deliberately saying, nope, sorry, you can't have this. You can't be at the top of this accounting profession unless you spent the extra money to get this 5th year.
You don't get to be in this community unless...
you don't get to go to AICPA Engage. You don't get to work at the top firms in a director role or a partner role, right? It is, that's the thing I don't like about it the most. It is exclusive in the worst way. Shall we end the episode on that
I was
note?
going to say
David?
on that note.
Thank you, everyone who tuned in live. Subscribe, get the notifications on YouTube, send us emails, theaccountingpodcast@earmark.me. Stay tuned for our community announcement. And if you want free CPE for listening to this episode, download the Earmark app, or just go to earmark.app on your web browser and create your free account and sign up and get a free CPE credit for listening. And if you want to support the work that we do at Earmark and on this show, become a Earmark subscriber for the low price of $130 a year. You too can support Blake and David's podcasting habit. Make it possible for us to go off on all sorts of topics every week for your enjoyment and education, your edutainment, and your CPE. Heather, thanks for joining us. Bacon Memes.
That's a good name.
I never thought I would say Bacon Memes on our show, but now I have. Thank you, Bacon Memes, for joining us. Bacon Memes says, thank you for all the wonderful work. I'm getting kind of hungry, so maybe I'll go eat some bacon.
Yeah.
Bye, David. See you here
Bye.
next week.